running, so at times in rush hours there'd be 2 cars running on the same schedule to provide increased capacity. Now the car has left Oak Street and is now on Marine Drive, and in fact I believe at this point has come to the actual terminus in Marpole, and that's verified by the fact that the operator has got out and is now putting up the other trolley pole and removing the other pole to change ends. These cars were double enders with controls in each end, and so the car is now leaving on its return trip to Vancouver. Now the film title showed Fairview Beltline, but actually we're going to have a trip on the observation cars, and we see the observation car sitting at the starting point at Cambie and Hastings alongside the Province Building, and a terminus which was shared with the Oak Street cars. The observation cars were rather unique. They were a sort of a toast rack type design, as you can see in the picture, and were a real feature in Vancouver for many, many years. They not only provided a sightseeing trip, but there was also an entertainment feature to the cars. There were 2 personality conductors who were well known in the city at the time. One was Teddy Lyons, who was actually a real comedian and kept the passengers entertained with his jokes and comedy, and then the other conductor was Dick Gardner. And Dick was an amateur magician, and he could actually do sleight of hand tricks and really confound the passengers with these various tricks. Now the cars made a big loop and ran south on Granville Street, and here we are crossing the bridge. This is the Cambie Bridge, actually, and operated via Granville, 41st Avenue, Dunbar, and Broadway. Incidentally, there was a very old intercity type bus there. It looked like a Fitzjohn bus crossing Cambie Bridge. Here we are. Here's the observation car heading south on Cambie, followed by one of the new Canadian Car Brill trolley coaches, which of course were the vehicles that replaced the majority of the streetcar lines in Vancouver. Also in that last picture was a Pacific Stage Lines twin coach Fageville bus. And this picture shows the Cambie trolley coach operating, so this was taken after that first trolley coach conversion. We're heading west on Broadway now. And here's a scene taken from the seats. The seats were staggered so that people had a good view, a good forward-facing view. That's Dick Gardner acting as conductor on this particular trip. Dick was not only a magician, he was a musician and a comedian, and both he and Teddy Lyons were ideally suited to this type of service. Now the car has gone all the way along West Broadway and is now on Dunbar, coming up the Dunbar Hill around 14th Avenue, the Dunbar diversion, and is going to make a turn onto 16th Avenue, and then we'll go on Dunbar southbound until it reaches 41st Avenue. On these trips, the conductors had arranged with local people to have their children come out and sing songs and do little dances on the street, and the car would stop, the observation car would stop, and while the children would perform, and it was really old-time homespun entertainment, I guess. not very sophisticated, but it certainly was well regarded in its day. The car is now heading south on Dunbar. And continuing south on Dunbar. The Dunbar lines were served by two-man cars. Now here's some of the entertainment. We have a little girl playing an accordion. The streetcar approaching is one of the, what were called the Hastings East steel cars. These are built by Canadian Car and Foundry in about 1926. The car in the background is one of the Brill streetcars. We're now turning the corner onto 41st Avenue at Dunbar. And then the car is going to Y at this point. Now the observation car routing was altered during the diminishing years of street railway service, and this was taken later on when the Kerrisdale line was not available for service, but at one time they used to make a big one-way loop. In this case they've run both ways on Dunbar, so my earlier comment on the routing was the one that was in effect prior to the time these pictures were taken. Now we're again heading north on Dunbar. We've come to 16th Avenue, the diversion, and then again we'll head north on Dunbar down towards Broadway. There were two observation cars, number 123 and 124, and then in the early years they were backed up by another car, number 29, which was really a city streetcar that had the top removed from the window railing upwards. And this car helped out in busy times when 3 cars were needed. However, when the war came along, there was such a demand for ridership on the system that number 29 was put into the Kitsilano shops and rebuilt into a conventional streetcar and served until the end of street railway service and regular passenger service. We've now crossed the Granville Bridge, and we're coming up to Pacific and Granville, and making the S turn to go north on Granville, north of Pacific. Of course, this is all radically changed now with the new Granville Bridge, and it's hard to identify these scenes and relate them to the present day situation. This is coming up to Davie and Granville. There's one of the PCC cars coming southbound on the Kitsilano line. There were 36 PCC cars on the Vancouver system. The observation car now is just turning off Granville onto Hastings Street, and in this scene is approaching Victory Square, which is the completion of the run, and the passengers are disembarking here. And then the observation car will run deadhead to Prior Barns and then resume another trip at a later time. Again, a Fagel, twin-coach Fagel gas bus is showing up there, and of course is indicating the shape of things to come as the system will gradually be converted. And the Fagel gas buses served as an interim measure when the lines were being stripped of trolley overhead and were put in service until the trolley coach overhead could be put in place. So they served on many of the lines on an interim basis. And so the observation car in this case looks to be heading back onto Cambie Street and ready for another trip. A most interesting